Thanks, Raghu, for all the insights and also the general tips on not being attached to code and whatnot. That was very helpful. Next up, we have Barun Acharya from Hakunox. So Barun is has just recently graduated and he's working as a security developer. But that's just his day job, right? Apart from that, he's also a maintainer of KubeArmor project, and that's under CNCF. And he's also a proud CNCF ambassador. And apart from CNCF, he's also been primarily involved with GSOC, Google Summer of Code, and LFX, Linux Foundation. So very excited to have you talk.
Hello? Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'll just expand on the introductions as well before I go on to why I am here. So, I'm Barun. I go by Demon1024 over the internet. You can find me on GitHub, LinkedIn, Instagram as well, using that same pseudonym. I maintain I maintain and lead a project called KubeArmor. It's under CNCF. We are a CNCF sandbox project. I'll dive deep into what's a CNCF project, what are sandbox and other levels. My day job is software engineering at Acharya, but I've been associated with Google Summer of Code and Linux Foundation mentorship, both as a mentee and a mentor. I still continue to mentor. We have been mentoring under KubeArmor. We have over 20 mentorship projects now, and that's being carried forward as well. I volunteer and organize meetups like these around India. So you can find me active inside India, outside India as well, speaking and conducting meetups. So like last two talks were very insightful. They talked about how enterprises are consuming open source and how there are various factors, what are the decision making factors involved in consuming open source. I am here to give more of a perspective on the other side. So we are developing open source. How do you interact with these consumers? How do you expand on these consumers and help you grow your project? One of the insight was that enterprises want vendor neutral and they don't want to have vendor lock-in. And that's where CNCF comes in. CNCF is Cloud Native Computing Foundation. All the projects that we have been talking about, Istio, Kubernetes, Containerd, Open Telemetry, Argo, lot of projects mentioned from the morning, they all come under CNCF. So what's CNCF? CNCF is a governing organization helping us maintain vendor neutrality. And if you all know, how many of you have interacted with Redis here? That's a lot of hands. And how many of you know what happened with Redis recently? Nope. So Redis recently changed their license because uh, they were like there were multiple reasons associated with that. But now because Redis was now they are trying to make it vendor locked in, that's where organization like CNCF and Linux Foundation come in, that they prevent and they maintain the vendor neutrality of a project so that anyone can consume and they don't fear what happened with Redis, that they need to migrate to some other project. What happens to the scope of the project? Do I, as a consumer, get impacted for license changes and all that? So that's what CNCF is. CNCF has a expansive landscape. There are 150 plus projects just under CNCF governance. There are more than 200 projects that are like CNCF, like they try to be in the CNCF landscape but are not vendor neutral. You can explore all of these projects on landscape.cncf.io. But that's a lot of projects. And what does it take to be in CNCF? It's not like because uh, like what enterprises think is if a project is part of CNCF, it's safe to use. It's like a certification for certain projects, or like it helps you gain that trust to consume that project. So it's not easy to get into CNCF as well. there are levels to CNCF projects. Primarily, there are three aspects: sandbox, incubating, and graduated. Sandbox projects are like, okay, new innovations, especially like, okay, AI started recently, and there are a lot of projects gaining popularity, and people are still experimenting. There are like every day 100 new projects out there, and every next day 100 projects are shutting down as well, because there's a new model by OpenAI or Cloud or Meta, and their project is maybe not relevant anymore. So once you start a project and you see that there's a differentiator, and you can prove that, okay, you are relevant in this industry, that's where sandbox projects comes into play. That CNCF adopts you, lets you prove yourself in the industry, helps you with all the infrastructure and non code or research oriented and technicalities. That's where sandbox comes in. And most of the sandbox projects have early adopters. Industry wide, lot of people try to use those new, as Raghu was talking about. They interacted with lot of projects and had a lot of experiences that, okay, maybe this will work, maybe this will not work. So those are the early adopters for projects, and that they help them validate as well as grow the projects as well. So that's what sandbox project is about. Incubation is, they have been in the industry, they have maybe like, according to CNCF, the like a metric criteria is more than five independent adopters. So if more than five organizations outside in the industry are using a project, they can move to incubation along with some other metrics. So like the community size, stars, lot of other factors. But the important factor is that you have actual consumers consuming the project, and that's a validation that moves you to incubation. And finally is a graduated project, where CNCF is just helping you maintain a vendor neutral governance. Outside of that, they think that you can progress on your own. Things like Kubernetes. So Kubernetes itself is a now self-governing body. It does not need help from CNCF to with anything, be it community, be it code. It is a self-organizing project. So that's why it's marked as graduated. So that was what CNCF projects are about. And though that's a large landscape. And you might think that, should I just start adopting each of them and implement all 150 projects in my enterprise? That would just leave you confused, right? It's not like you are looking for, it depends what you are looking for. So I'll take a step back, and because I work in security and I maintain a security project, I'll scope down to the security landscape. So still there are maybe 15 or 20 projects. You are not needing to implement all of them. They serve different. Uh, One thing to know is that in general, projects in CNCF landscape, they are not competing with each other. They serve different purposes, and that's why they are in the landscape. And maybe they are solving the same problem, but in different ways. So you as your organization need to evaluate what is relevant for you and what is not relevant for you. So I'll take an example of one project that I spoke about, KubeArmor. So couple of angles about what is KubeArmor, why we decided to be part of CNCF, and how has being in CNCF helped us as well, helped KubeArmor and myself. So talking about KubeArmor is a cloud native runtime security enforcement system. Lot of words, but essentially what it does is it can secure your applications at runtime. So something like ransomware attacks, privilege escalation attempts, they can be prevented. And that's what KubeArmor is. But the question comes, why was KubeArmor donated to CNCF? We had a differentiated product. Why not just keep it enterprise? Why not just capitalize on being a differentiator and take the profits? So one of the major point us was that enterprises like vendor neutral, and they don't want vendor lock-in. But and being a security project, it was much more important to be a vendor neutral and be out in the open source, because how do you say that, okay, we have a differentiated product, but keeping it in private, now you want maybe many third party auditors to validate that, okay, we want GR security and MITRE, PCI DSS to come, like, tell that, okay, this project is okay. But that's hard to do, especially for a smaller scale project. We were just a 3-member team back then, and we wanted to quickly let the world know that this is a differentiated product and it can actually solve your problems. So the reason to go with CNCF was that it quickly gave us that edge, that they had their own security team which validated the product for us, and they advocated it for us as well. So that was one of the primary reason that we donated it to CNCF. Other reasons were we quickly got adoption. We quickly got access to the larger community. CNCF community is a very large community, and we could capitalize on that. And so those were the advantages that we saw when we were deciding to donate it. But there were a lot of other advantages that we realized once we donated it. I'll talk about that as well. Before diving into why, like, what we got as advantages, I just want to talk about why KubeArmor was adopted by CNCF as well. It's not like any company out there decides that I want to donate a project to CNCF and that works out. So it was a lot of steps. So they have a lot of technicalities, like your documentation, your community is all vendor neutral, you are on CNCF Slack, your project is open source, licensing, so they don't allow AGPL license and all those licensing, because uh, they realize that enterprise, when enterprise wants to use a product, license is very important, and generally they mandate Apache 2, which is what all of us tend to like. And so outside of those technicalities, we had to like justify them that we are differentiated. There's no product out there in general in open source which can do this, as well as how do we differentiate with products and projects inside the landscape. So one of the primary questions were, how do you differentiate from couple of some graduated and incubation projects like Falco, Kiverno. So Kiverno, I saw Kiverno mentioned in one of the slides as well. So after that justification, they conducted their own independent security audit, as I said, and gave us feedback. So that was the step that was carried out, and we got into Sandbox. But journey from Sandbox has been like a lot beneficial for us. We went from just from like metrics that people like us maintainers like, is we went from maybe 100 star to almost 1.1500 stars right now. Our community grew from maybe what 50 members to we are a 1,000 plus member community right now. Independent adopters. So as I said, a 3 or 4 member team cannot really operate on scale. Uh, Projects like this. So I guess Intuit mentioned they had 350 plus clusters where they rolled out their like project. So we don't have that like resources to test out the project on a 350 plus cluster, 350 node plus cluster, 350 clusters. So we had independent. We did not even know. Last year, one of an independent adopter came to us and said that I tried it on a 1,000 node cluster across my 100 cluster environment, and one of a problem was this. Here's the fix. Keep it. And that made us too happy that, okay, the project is actually running at scale, and even though we did not have the resources to test it, we could leverage the open source community to test it for us, or like adopt like enterprise adopters for us to test it out for us. So that was the aspect, one of the aspect that we really like felt validated about, that it was a good decision to be a part of CNCF. Other part was, like, as I said, we are actively part of mentorship programs. So that's one way for us to give back to the community, but also that helps us expand our contributor base. So as a like a 5-member team is now managing maybe 100 contributors out there. 100 is a number that GitHub shows us. Maybe 15 or 20 of them are actively contributing, but that's still a much bigger number than what we were earlier. And people outside of Acinox. So KubeArmor was started at Acinox, and we that's a point I missed. But we still are a small team inside Acinox, just focused on this. But we are now have independent, uh, like people outside Acinox are also maintaining and actively contributing it. So that's also one of the criteria for incubation, that your project should have, it should not be one organization contributing to the project. It's important that at least, I guess they mentioned at minimum 3, but there are 3 independent organizations contributing to a project. So that's also, like, from our perspective, it helps us with like independent ideas. But from an enterprise perspective, you know that it's not a single entity driving the governance of the project. You know that there are multiple organizations in the mind share of the project, and they will not let the project grow in a specific way. What if I decide that, okay, this project needs to be totally AI focused, I will leave all other system related security aside, because AI is the bandwagon. But the governance won't let me do it, because we need to make sure that all the existing adopters are catered, as well as we obviously want to expand our product line to adopt new adopters as well. So those kinds of aspects were what helped us out being in CNCF. And and that's why, like, currently it mentions as sandbox. We have been already recommended for incubation, so we are moving to the incubation stage very soon. And yeah, coming, like, as I already covered up, we were being promoted to incubation because we have independent contributor base. We have more than maybe 10 adopters through Acinox as well as independent. So being a, like, they don't really care that, okay, being as a Acinox can, as a vendor, can sell KubeArmor to maybe all of its client, but having an independent adoption makes sure that it's not just being consumed through a vendor, but people actually see value in what it's doing, and so that other enterprises can independently adopt it. Lot of bigger enterprises don't prefer going through a vendor because there are a lot of, it's costly. Plus, it's also the fact that there are compliance related things that hamper this out. So having an independent, having it in open source and having it as an independent adoption also adds a lot of credibility to the project, but also a lot of satisfaction to the maintainers. So that was the angle where, why a project should be in open source, and how can it capitalize on various aspects of being under governing organizations like CNCF. But CNCF, like CNCF is one of those. There's Linux Foundation, which is catering for, like, across not just Linux, but it is catering for edge, IoT, lot of infrastructure related things. There's JavaScript Foundation, there's GraphQL Foundation. There are a lot of foundations out there, and depending on what your project is scoped to, you might want to, like, being on the consumer end, you might want to prefer projects that come under them, and as a developer of open source, you might want to consider leveraging those organizations out for your project as well. So coming to the spirit of Hacktoberfest, you want to contribute to a project. And my journey personally started out. So I was not, it's not like I one day decided to, that, okay, I'm working in a company and I'll open source the project. It was not like that. I was still a student. I was contributing to various open source projects. And one of my contributions led to me being part of KubeArmor, and then I like led grew from that contributor to maintainer and leading the development team itself. So I just wanted to share that how do you contribute to a project? What are the angles associated with contributing to a project, and how can you help contributing? How can you help grow projects as well? So contributing to CNCF, as I like to call 4 Cs. I think my update did not reflect in the slides, but code, community, content, and consumer. So being an end user is consuming open source as well. So there are 4 aspects involved in contributing. I'll start with code. That's what like most of the engineers like to do. So you're contributing to core features. You're contributing to the fundamentals. Uh, and as the previous talks mentioned, a lot of features were missing while they were trying to adopt things. You contributed those features out and helped implement in the open source. That's one part. You are helping release management. So these open source projects, because they are so self-organizing, you have a lot of diverse uh, like not just code base, people base in general. So having to manage and maintaining constant release cycles is a pain point as well. What goes into a release, what does not go into the release, because it's not just one. It's not like in general, not one organization following agile methodology to go and release a project. It is multiple organizations having a lot of diverse point of views, which goes into this. So release management is a much bigger pain point generally in open source, because you don't have that veto power that, okay, my manager said that release this project, so I'll just go ahead and release it. There are a lot of validation steps goes into it, and a lot of even if like one of the vendor comes to us and says that my one of my clients needs this, he's going to pay me 100 million contract for this, can you release it? Maybe we can help prioritize it, but it's not like because they said it, it will be released. So a lot of checks and consideration goes into a release process. So you can help with the release management. You can help with reviewing code. In general, right now, as a maintainer, I can see that KubeArmor already has more than 150 open pull requests, because we are a small team and not everyone has the bandwidth to take up all open pull requests. They have a priority order. The backlog, we have our own queue, which we are consuming and popping from the queue and reviewing things. But if you are consuming it, you can help with reviewing code and help land down features as well. You can eh, suppose there's a bigger project, they have their own special interest group which drive towards specific product line or specific angles of development. You can join them, or you can help with white papers, so that you are you are like in recent times CNCF has released a lot of white papers. Scoping down to security, they talked about AI, they talked about runtime, they talked about admission controllers. So all those aspects, they release a white paper every year, so that industry and enterprises out there can use this as a framework or reference document to help implement things in their own infrastructure. So that was code. Coming to community, you can participate in discussions such as these, or online, or on their meet, or like in general on their Slack, GitHub, Discord, Matrix. I'm not sure if someone is still using IRC. You can join their uh, groups and contribute to discussions, help people out, and you can host events, meetups, and finally there's mentorship, because why not contribute back and give back what you learned from. One is content. So documentation, blogs, podcasts, videos, speaking at events, they are also a form of contribution, because you are helping advocate the project, and not just for yourself. Your examples of, like, if I talk about demos and talks, how you implemented a project also motivates other people to like adopt a project, as well as gives them that, okay, one big organization has adopted it, I can follow the same principles and adopt it myself as well. And finally, being a consumer, you are adopting an ecosystem. You believe that, okay, you are providing feedback, and you can not just only contribute back through code community, but being a membership, you allow conferences to happen, allow meetups to happen. So CNCF has a mechanism for membership. You can like subscribe to their membership through, they have silver tier, gold tier, and help them conduct events. uh, I have the link attached at the end. And finally, sharing the case studies. So what are the, so I talked about these four forms of contribution, but does CNCF have readily avenues where you can help out? So you have the CNCF events, you have KubeCons. So KubeCon is happening first time in India. So yeah, but KubeCons are a flagship event for CNCF. They happen twice. They used to happen twice a year, once in North America, once in Europe. But now this is the first year where it's happening in India as well. If you will be around in Delhi on 11/12, do join at KubeCon. There are CNCGs. These are more local chapters. If you, so there's one in Bangalore, there's one in Delhi, there's one in lot of countries and lot of cities. And you can be a maintainer or contributor to a project. So that gives you a lot of like, there are a lot of benefits associated to that. You get to, you get free certification. So like certification
ರೇಣುಕಾ
program in general,
ಮಳೆ
there are,
ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಒಗಿಬೇಡಿ.
so there are a lot of certifications involved in cloud native landscape. CNCF is okay to and happy to fund you out there. Or if you want to attend events such as these, CNCF has a scholarship program for you to do that. Obviously, there are swags and other aspects involved, but these were much more meaningful. You can contribute to tags and SIGs. So I already mentioned you can contribute, but these have proper frameworks that you can start out here. If you contribute 2 or 3 PRs, or if you contribute to a white paper, you are like promoted to a contributor, to a chair, to a co-chair. There are a lot of like levels and governance initiatives involved, and you can leverage that. And finally, you can be a CNCF ambassador. So because I have time, I'll quickly go around what's a role of a maintainer. I mentioned there's code, community, content, and consumer. So maintainer lives between the code and community part. So you are also contributing to core features. You are like an architect who is mapping out things. You are helping with what features should land, what features should not. And you are also juggling with the community, managing the release processes and helping people out with their queries, because you as a like one of the core members of the team understand what's the project about, and you can help out with nitty-gritties when someone asks a question. Role of an ambassador is more about advocating. You be a mage who adds the magic to all the content, and you make people, you make project relatable to people, and that's how you help projects grow. So being, you can you can be an ambassador by talking at events, hosting meetups, mentorship, all, and they generally tend to live between the community and content part. So that's the aspect they cover out of 4Cs. Finally, I just want to end this on a note that if you are doing any of this, code, community, contribution, content, you are a superhero. So keep doing that. And that's all from my end. Thank you. Any questions?
You started with the example of Redis as in changing the licensing, and that is an kind of an we are seeing that as a trend. So recently we have HashiCorp also changing their licensings, uh, and with the adoption of CNCF projects, that is one issue that we are observing in our platforms. So what we have started now doing is building an abstraction on the open source so that we can move away with the open source anytime the licensing changes.
But that's not a fair point, right? You mentioned so Redis and HashiCorp Terraform. So they were primary examples. Both of them were not under CNCF or Linux Foundation. That's why they could change the licensing. If you are,
HashiCorp Vault was there.
it's
In,
not under CNCF. They so there's they are not under CNCF. They are in the landscape because they are a cloud project,
uh-huh.
but they are not a CNCF governed uh, project. So that's why. So like once Terraform changed their licensing, you had open tofu popping up in CNCF landscape because they realized that there needs to be a vendor neutral one, and they being under CNCF. So if, I have a project under CNCF, so we cannot change the licensing. So
Hmm.
that's they
So
mandate
is
that.
there an life cycle where people want to take out their projects from CNCF?
So like it's open source, so
Uh,
you can create a fork, change a license, and from there on, so the history, so like the point is license is valid for each of the commit you do. You're signing off, so CNCF implements, you sign off your commits so that you agree to that whatever is being done will be is under CNCF's governance. It's not your
hmm.
uh, you don't have the right. So once you fork it and the new commit, you can take it to a different direction, obviously. But commits done till that point are always going to be like in the CNCF governance, and they will maintain that vendor neutrality.
Mhm.
And CNCF exists to such that like if something like Redis or HashiCorp happens, they can actually it does not happen. It cannot happen under CNCF governance. So that's the point.
Okay.
I think we can take questions offline because we have tea break till
Yep.
11:30.
Yep.
Thanks. That was it. Great.